Welcome into Rob Wright's Gen X Pop Culture. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the facts from the Karate Kid movie from 1984. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Could always use your support. And let's get into this video. Karate Kid has some very interesting stuff that I did not know about it, and I'm glad to share some of these interesting facts and slides with you. So, the first one we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about one of the cars from the Karate Kid. The 1948 Ford Super Deluxe, the yellow one that you see depicted here, that was part of Mr. Miyagi's lineup of cars. It's the one where he taught Daniel to wax on and wax off, and it's the one that he gives as birthday present number 2. Well, the cool thing about this car is that it's still around, and that's because it was given to Ralph Macchio by the producer of The Karate Kid. Kind of cool that he got that, and you'll see more pictures of it here. You'll see where Allie gets to drive it in the one scene where they kind of make up. And here's the wax on scene where he's teaching him how to do it. And there's Ralph with the car. I think this was a shot from a few years ago in 2019. But apparently Ralph says it's in good condition. He had to make a couple of modifications to it, but it still runs and it still works. And apparently, according to Ralph, the story goes that right before they got to do the second one, Ralph had inquired about the car, and the producers gave it to him as a reward for how great the first movie was. It ended up right before they went into production of the second one at his house, arriving there. And what a cool car to have. What a cool car to keep. The other great thing about this car and the fact that he kept it is for the wonderful series that if you love Karate Kid, you should watch Cobra Kai. Season 2 of Cobra Kai, Ralph had the car shipped from his home in Long Island all the way down to Atlanta where they filmed Cobra Kai, and it's on the set of Cobra Kai right here in this picture. So very cool. That's so awesome that he got to keep it, and so really cool that they got to use it in the modern update Cobra Kai. So let's get into some more interesting facts about Mr. Miyagi. So you'll remember Karate Kid, you have this wonderful scene where Daniel comforts Mr. Miyagi as he's drunk, remembering the loss of his wife and his son as she died in complications of childbirth while he was away fighting the Germans in the war. And he's a little bit drunk, and the scene is a very tender and emotional scene that actually got Pat Morita nominated for an Oscar. Well, the producers wanted to cut this scene because it slowed the pacing of the film. However, the director asked that it be kept in because it's such a great scene. And the Oscar voters agreed with him, and that's why he got nominated for an Academy Award for this scene. I thought this scene was beautiful. It adds a lot to the character of Mr. Miyagi. It tells you a little bit more about his past, and you get a better understanding for maybe why he doesn't really want to fight, and he teaches Daniel defense. Also, it gives you a perspective of Mrs. Miyagi and his family life, and maybe some of the troubles that he's had to carry with him for the past 40 years or so at the time of this movie. So it's a really good scene. I really like the scene. The other thing that I wanted to show you about Mr. Miyagi was the famous logo that we get that he tells him on the patch on the back of the uniform that gives him for his birthday that Mrs. Miyagi made. Well, Pat Morita actually designed this logo with the bonsai tree and kind of the sun in the background. I think it's a beautiful logo. I didn't know that Pat Morita had designed it, but I thought this was really cool. They still use it today in Cobra Kai. They've added something for season 6 that I'm not going to spoil here, but it's still a wonderful, beautiful design, and I absolutely love it, and I had no idea that Pat Morita helped design it. The other thing about it is that Pat Morita based a lot of his portrayal on his stunt double. His stunt double is karate master. I know I'm going to mess this up, so I'm going to go real slow. Fumio Demura, who was his stunt double in the movie. And he based a lot of his mannerisms and a little bit of his speech as Mr. Miyagi on his stunt double, Mr. Demura, because he was a karate master and he felt like he looked a lot like Mr. Miyagi and kind of gave him the blueprint for how to play Mr. Miyagi. Demura did a lot of the stunts. The famous stunt where you see him jumping down and beating up the Cobra Kai kids in their skeleton gear, that was him. And then also this slide right here, this is Demura doing the crane technique on the beach. And I think it's really cool. Really good nod to the stunt double. Pretty awesome. I thought it was really nice and really cool. Let's go to the next part, because the next part is interesting because Ralph Macchio talked about the ending of The Karate Kid. Well, the ending of The Karate Kid is interesting because part of it bled in Karate Kid Part 2 and they used for Karate Kid Part 2. But originally they were going to cut all that and, save it for another time or leave it as a deleted scene because they didn't feel like they needed to really address the Cobras and Kreese at that time. So they ended the movie with panning it back to Mr. Miyagi with his look of approval, which I thought was a great ending. I think it solidified Daniel and Mr. Miyagi's relationship, and it solidified the reason for the karate and the whole concept of the movie, that at its core is learning to have balance in your whole life. But Ralph Macchio said it was originally supposed to end with Daniel hosting up the trophy in this picture, and that's how it was supposed to end. But they added the part of Mr. Miyagi, and I thought it was great. I thought it was perfect how it ended. I do love the fact that they added the additional footage they shot after the tournament in Karate Kid Part 2, because I think it sets it up really well. And if you don't know it, if you've never seen Karate Kid Part 2, basically what happens is Martin Kove's character, John Kreese, who's an incredible portrayal of a karate master that's kind of evil and kind of set in his ways. He basically chastises Johnny for finishing second, breaks his trophy. They kind of, want to get away from Kreese, but Kreese kind of grabs him and is choking him. And Mr. Miyagi kind of steps in, and Kreese and Miyagi fight. And Kreese kind of starts to muscle up to him, and he's getting ready to punch Mr. Miyagi, and Mr. Miyagi ducks out of the way, and he punches a car window. He does this twice and ends up with bloody knuckles. And then finally, Mr. Miyagi just gets the better of him, and Mr. Miyagi confronts him with basically John Kreese's own style, no mercy. And he comes in to deliver the final blow, and then he honks his nose, which just shows his lighter side and kind of the better way to handle the situation. And I think it plays well into the development of Karate Kid Part 2. But I thought these were great scenes, and I'm so glad that Martin Kove and William Zabka got some credit in Karate Kid Part 2. It's kind of cool to see what happened to those guys like right after the tournament. And then Martin Kove returns as John Kreese again for Karate Kid Part 3, which is a whole other story that's interesting that's, after this one. So I thought it sets up really well. Let's talk about some of the deleted scenes, because I think there's some interesting facts with the deleted scene. So the first deleted scene is entitled like The Delivery. And basically Daniel signs up for the tournament, but he has to have permission slip signed by his mom, and Johnny kind of delivers it to him. And he basically says, I thought there was a no contact. I didn't know I needed permission from my mom. And he's like, well, accidents are known to happen, is what Johnny tells him. And Johnny just questions him and asks him why he's picking on him. And Johnny's like, well, because I feel like it. And then Daniel confronts him about Kreese and saying maybe Kreese is wrong. And that's when Johnny shoves him up against the wall. And he said, maybe I'll take back my promise and kick your butt right here, and really kind of threatens him. And so Daniel takes the permission slip, and there's also another cut scene where he takes it to his mom and has his mom sign it. Johnny also, after leaving Daniel here, kicks a locker, which kind of demonstrates his character and his anger, which is really interesting. I think this was cut for pacing and stuff, but I don't know if it really fits as well into this scene. I wish they would bring it up in Cobra Kai a little bit more. This particular scene, I don't think it was ever brought up in Cobra Kai, but I think it shows Johnny's anger is not what he thinks it is. It's really about Allie, and I don't think he's realized it yet. He just hates Daniel for, kind of ruining his senior year. So it's interesting. The next scene that was deleted is referenced in Cobra Kai. It's a hilarious scene. Go look this up. It's called Blueberry Pie. And basically, while Daniel's sitting down, Johnny slips a blueberry pie right under him, and he sits on the blueberry pie. Johnny kind of makes fun of him, saying, "Hey, wait a minute, those are the only pants you have." And Daniel takes the rest of the blueberry pie and wipes it on Johnny's shirt. Then they start to fight on that. And I thought it was a really cool scene. Again, it's referenced in Cobra Kai. Third scene that is in there from the deleted scenes is Bobby. And Bobby's kind of the Cobra Kai with conscience. Bobby's the one that kind of says, hey, leave him alone. He's had enough during the skeleton fight scene. And Bobby's the one that Kreese asked to put Daniel out of commission. Bobby wants to fight him straight up, but Kreese tells him to kick his knee. And Bobby gets disqualified for the tournament, gets kicked out. And he's so disgusted by this that he takes his belt off and throws it down at Kreese, quitting Cobra Kai. And I thought this was an interesting scene. It's also why you don't see Bobby with the Cobras for the rest of the movie until Karate Kid Part 2 when he's outside with them. Okay, let's move on and talk a little bit about the creator and writer of Cobra Kai, or of Cobra Kai, not of Cobra Kai, the Karate Kid. And that would be Robert Mark Carmen. And Robert Mark Carmen, the movie is kind of semi-autobiographical. He did learn to, he learned karate, and there really was a Shogun Miyagi who he learned karate under, and he studied martial arts so he could defend himself from bullies. So a lot of this movie is based upon his real life experiences. This is a picture of him. And then this is a picture of the person who, the real Mr. Miyagi, who his karate is based off of. So it's really cool. I thought it was cool how he kind of inserted elements of his own life into this wonderful story. All right, let's get into casting, because casting is interesting. So at the time, you had the movie The Outsiders, where Ralph Macchio was in it. There were several stars that were in The Outsiders that auditioned for this movie, in addition to several up-and-coming stars that auditioned for The Karate Kid. I don't know if I can imagine anybody else but Ralph Macchio, but here's the list here. Sean Penn, Robert Downey Jr., Charlie Sheen, John Cryer, Emilio Estevez, Nicolas Cage, Anthony Edwards, C. Thomas Howell, Tom Cruise, Eric Stoltz, and D.B. Sweeney. All of them auditioned for the role of Daniel LaRusso. Ralph Macchio got it. I'm glad he did, because I think he made it a memorable role. I think all these actors are great actors. They went on to do other great movies, but I think this was Ralph Macchio's movie. The other good thing about it was that Ralph Macchio said that his performance in The Outsiders really solidified it, and it really helped them go to him as the main character of Daniel. Also, he said that Daniel was originally Danny Weber, and then they changed it to LaRusso for the film. So for Mr. Miyagi, they had a different actor in mind, and I'm going to butcher this guy's name, but here's a picture of him. He's a famous Japanese actor, Toshiro Mifune, and he was in several Kurosawa films, such as The Seven Samurai and The Hidden Fortress, of which Star Wars is loosely based on. And he auditioned for the role, but the problem is that he didn't speak English. And so Pat Morita tried out for the role, and they didn't think Pat Morita was going to be right for the role because he was a comedian, and he was closely associated with Arnold from Happy Days. But Pat Morita was able to, come up with a good voice, come up with a unique style, and get the role of Mr. Miyagi. Let's talk about the role for Johnny Lawrence. So you'll never believe who they wanted originally for Johnny Lawrence, who they considered George McFly himself, Crispin Glover. Can you imagine Crispin Glover in that role? It would have been a unique Johnny, I tell you. I don't know if I could see him as the bully after seeing him as George McFly, but Crispin Glover was up for the role. Zabka was also auditioned. They liked Zabka, and apparently Zabka's interesting audition helped him earn the role. So what happened was he was in the audition. He was wearing a headband, and he basically, in the audition, walked up to the director and grabbed him and said, "Watch your mouth, a-hole." And then he walked out and he basically came back in and said, "Hey, that's what Johnny Lawrence is." And the director was like, "Yeah, you got it. It's Johnny Lawrence." Although there was some concerns about his height compared to Ralph's height, but Zabka responded that Bruce Lee was smaller than Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and beat him in Game of Death, so that kind of convinced him. So very interesting stuff. Elizabeth Shue was perfect for the role as Allie, but here are two other actresses that were considered: Helen Hunt and Demi Moore. Both are beautiful, gorgeous actresses, but you know me, as if you watched the last video, I love Elizabeth Shue in this role. I had the hots for her, the puppy love, all the feels, everything. So I'm glad they cast Elizabeth Shue in that role. Anyway, that's it for all the facts about the Karate Kid. What are some things that you like that you know about the Karate Kid that maybe I didn't mention here? What was your favorite fact that I shared? Let's have a good discussion. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the video, and we'll see you on the next one.